On behalf of the Academy, I want to thank Noel for keeping a strong connection with Cranbrook and providing this opportunity to bring top designers here to give a public talk and to speak with our students. So before I introduce our speaker, why don't we thank Noel for their support. One of my favorite aspects of the annual Noel Lecture is that it gives me a chance to invite and meet the designers and design thinkers that are shaping the contemporary scene. In the recent past, this has allowed us to bring design icons like Teo Remy, Max Lamb, Martino Gamper, Jerzy Seymour, and Burgeon Pott and Lindsay Adelman to Cranbrook. This year, the Noel Lecture has given us a chance to bring an important emerging voice in the area of design theory to visit with the students. Tonight we're honored to host design theorist and writer Stefano Caggiano, and to add his name to that list of important voices that are helping to shape contemporary design culture. Stefano is a design critic known for his emphasis on design languages. He holds degrees in both philosophy and product design and has authored many articles and the ebook Design Languages, which provides a guide to the grammar of design languages with an emphasis on the contemporary scene. He currently works as a senior researcher with the consultancy society NextAtlas. He's also a freelance journalist with the leading design magazine Interni, and also works as a contract professor with several Italian design universities, including NABA in Milan and in the Faculty of Design and Art of the Free University of Bozen. My connection with Stefano is a real example of the power of the internet to bring people together. It was probably about a year ago when I happened upon Stefano's Pinterest boards, which immediately struck me as being very fascinating and put together by someone who is both very aware of the most contemporary things happening in design, but a very thoughtful way of classifying and categorizing those designs. And so as soon as I saw this, I said, wow, who is this guy? And so I had to hunt him down online, and then learned that he had written a book called Design Languages that at that time was available only in Italian, but I downloaded a copy and saw it in Italian, and immediately needed to read it in English because I don't read Italian. So I was able to hunt him down on Facebook and reach out to him and say, are you, and just ask, are you planning an English version of this book? And with that started a conversation, and also a process of, well, I got to request the English version of the book, which he was able to produce over the summer and release that as an ebook, which then I was able to use as a text with my students, and also inspired us and gave us the chance to invite him here to Cranbrook to share his ideas about design. So kind of long story, but now here he is at Cranbrook from Milan. So he's been great this week. He spent a couple days with us, spending some time in the studio, and has already given us several lectures to give us more insight into the text from his book. So he's been very generous in both coming here all the way from Milan and in sharing his thoughts with the students in the studio. So please help me welcome Stefano Caggiano.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you to Noel for sponsoring my visiting. Just a sec. Okay, it works. So, I'm from Italy, as Scott said, and in Italy now we are in the middle of the night, so if you don't get very well what I'm telling, it's probably my fault. My mind is already sleeping, but I will try to do my best talking about the design languages. Actually, the title of my lecture tonight is the same title of the book Scott referred to. Of course, I'm not talking about the whole book. It's going to be too long and maybe a little bit boring. I will just focus on a few of the many design languages I deal with in the book. The languages I selected for the lecture, all of them provide what I think is an insight in the next future of what's going on, what will be happening in the convergence between digital design, digital reality, and material design, material objects, material things. This is actually the last topic of my lecture, titled Enchanted Objects and Distributed Interface. But before reaching that point, let's pass through the other ones, starting from spending just a few words on what I mean for a design language. I think of a design language as an iceberg. An iceberg is made up of a top, which is out of the water, so it is something you can perceive through your senses. You can see, you can touch it. It has a physical body. It has a look that you can perceive. But the iceberg, it is also made by an underwater part, an underwater body. In my metaphor, the underwater part is the cultural content, the cultural meaning connected with the visible part, with the aesthetic. So the bottom line is that a design language, to me, is made up of an aesthetic and the meaning. An aesthetic supported by a meaning, and the meaning conveyed through the aesthetic. In this timeline, you can see how I organized my research on design languages. Each line represents a language. Each column represents a decade. So a language passed through the several decades, the several times. On this chart, you have only the second half of the last century and contemporary years. Actually, in the book, I deal with also the previous decades, the previous periods of design history, but for tonight, it's enough to take a look at this chart. So a language runs through the time and passes through the decades, and it reacts, chemically reacts with each decade, with a social and cultural context of this decade, each epoch. Before taking a look of the languages I want to enter, I'd like to show you just a couple of the other languages to give you a little bit bigger picture of my work. As an example, the evolution of geometric language in contemporary time, coming from objects like that. This is a TV designed by Zanus and Supper in 1969. As you can see, it is like a black square. This is the traditional geometric language, the geometric language from the 60s in this case. This language in contemporary time evolves in what I call low-res language. Tangible objects, real objects, designed deliberately, purposely designed as they were low-resolution files. One other example, the evolution of organic design. Organic design dates back to the 50s and the 60s. Organic design is about having the object conceived as a unique whole instead of a sum of several parts, several elements added together. This language in contemporary time, in contemporary culture, evolves according to what I call digital organic. Digital organic, of course, the impact here comes from digitality, especially from digital manufacturing, 3D printing. Indeed, 3D printing allows you to print, to shape the matter as it were a living organism, as it were living matter, not artificial dead matter. Because thanks to these machines, you can make the matter grow up according to the shape you thought for it, as it were a living organism. But these were just, as I said, short examples just to enlarge the picture a little bit. But these are the languages I would like to deal with now, to spend more time on. The evolution of rationalists, of pop language, of decorative language, and the evolution of anthropological language. The evolution of rationalists, I call it obvious construction language. I call it this way, well, actually, even the rationalist in the past was about putting together elements in order to create the object as a sum of distinct parts, distinct elements. You can see in these two charts, the one on your left hand is from Rietveld, the other one is by Breuer. Both of them are conceived as a geometrical sum of parts, of elements. They leave the sum of the parts visible. And the contemporary evolution, what I call obvious construction, pushes this leaving the parts visible in their being distinct to each other, pushes this kind of organization of the object even further. This is why I call it obvious construction. But this is just the aesthetic. Now, what about the meaning supporting this aesthetic, the cultural meaning, the cultural reason? Because people nowadays appreciate such an aesthetic in furniture. I think that the reason has to do with the time, with an increasing amount of time we spend having a relationship with digital tools like smartphones, like tablets, these kind of things. Because in digital tools, we are familiar, very familiar actually, but only with the interface, only with the layer purposely designed in order to meet us, to meet the use. But the inner function, the inner logic of digital devices is totally hidden to us. It is outside of our cognitive reach. We can't perceive it. This is not totally new if you think that many people have no idea of what happens inside their car. I'm one of those. But nowadays, because the growing number of digital devices and the growing amount of time we spend in relations with them, because of that, it grows proportionally the time we spend having the relation with objects that are basically mysterious to us, at least to most of us. As a counterbalance to this mystery, to this mysterious experience, people appreciate aesthetics in objects that do the opposite, that counterbalance such a mystery. The more mysterious the time spent with digital tools, the more we appreciate aesthetics that are not mystery at all, aesthetics that have no hidden levels, nothing hidden in them. Everything is open and visible in them. Just like a bicycle, I compare them, these kind of objects, to a bicycle. A bicycle is an object honest. You trust your bicycle because you can see anything in it at the first glance. There are no secrets in the bicycle, no hidden levels. These objects are like bicycle in this sense. They display their composition, they display that they are made of parts without fusing them in one unique organic whole. Even the fact that they often features several colors for several parts. Even this aesthetic feature is meant to convey this idea of several parts not fused into one organic, unique whole. In this chair, you have 4 legs passing through the seat without any effort to make the joint between the parts more gentle from the aesthetic viewpoint, more organic done. You have a different color for the back in order to underline that that part is distinct, is another part than the other ones. And the way the legs that actually become armrests are crossed is again openly visible, obviously constructed. So far about obvious construction. Now let's move to another language, transitional objects, which is the evolution of pop language. Pop language was a language that, like in the 1969s, was expressed by this Gaetano Pesce's armchair, named Up 5, but the nickname of this armchair was Woman, because it was inspired by a woman's body. Then this language evolved in a more, let's say, understandment way, with more understanding. And nowadays, in contemporary time, pop language becomes transitional objects, a language called transitional objects. The reason for using this term, actually the term transitional objects comes from psychology, and I did that on purpose. I choose this title on purpose, and in order to explain why I choose that title, we need to take a little excursus in cognitive science, because that language provides again an answer, an effort to counterbalance what's happening in contemporary time to our mind. Let's see what's happening thanks to this excursus. Contemporary cognitive science. In contemporary cognitive science, we have this theory called extended mind theory, widely credited actually. And according to this theory, the mind is not confined in the brain. The mind is not confined inside the skull, but actually the mind extends out of the skull, out of the brain. It is more extended because the brain is the physical organ we have in our skull, and the mind is what that organ does, like a piano does music in the same way. The mind is made up of the cognitive process we can run through our brain. If you consider the mind as consisting in the cognitive process our brain does, then you have to consider as being part of the extended mind, not only the brain, not only our organic mind, but also the cognitive tools that enable our brain to run specific cognitive operations. Cognitive tools, an example, a calendar is a cognitive tools, because if you have to remember just one meeting, it's easy to do that by your own organic mind. But if you need to remember many meetings, 60, 80, 100 meetings in as many different places with as many different people, you can't do that without a support, without a calendar. So the calendar enables your brain to run that cognitive process. And because of that, the calendar is part of your mind, of your extended mind. Now, the mind works this way, so nothing new in that concerning what's going on in digitality. But the novelty introduced by digitality is that nowadays, the outsourcing of the mind to the external cognitive tools is becoming huge, is reaching an unprecedented amount, because the whole digital ecosystem we are connected to for most of our time, always actually, all that ecosystem is our extended mind. And the many cognitive operations enabled by that system um, they imply that we are delegating these operations to the digital ecosystem, to the external part of the mind. You can read some examples in the slide. Because of this delegation, this outsourcing, you do not need to find your way yourself. This was, in the past, a cognitive process you needed to do by your own brain, your own organic mind. Nowadays, no need to do that yourself. A GPS app will tell you the way. No need to be able to write properly. You have you have softwares that fix your writing. Now, in a matter of few years, we will have probably self-driving cars. So even driving will become a cognitive process, a skill delegated outside our mind, outside of us. Now, the point, as I said, is not delegating in itself, but the amount of this delegation. The amount of this delegation because of digitality that actually results in a paradoxical effect. Because on the one hand, we are becoming cognitively stronger because we are able to manage and to work out an unprecedented amount of information thanks to the digital ecosystem, thanks to this extended part of our mind. On the other hand, because this external part is so powerful, we are becoming unable, or anyway weaker and weaker in our own organic brain. Actually, nowadays, there are several books and scholars. Half of them say that we are becoming stupider because of the internet, because of the digital tools. The other half tell and argue that we are becoming stronger, more cognitively performing. I think that both of them are right. Both of them are right because the paradox relies in the extended nature of the mind. Because of that, we are becoming both smarter and stupider, cognitively stronger and weaker. Now, this massive delegation, this huge outsourcing of mind, I think it is one of the reasons for the growing of anxiety in the developed countries. Anxiety is indeed one of the most diffused diseases nowadays in the developed countries. There are other reasons, I think, but one of the reasons is this massive delegation of the ownership of our own mind. Because anxiety comes from the feeling that you are losing control. The difference between fear and anxiety is that a fear has a specific subject. You are afraid of dogs, or you are afraid of the dark spaces or closed rooms. Anxiety has not a specific subject. Anxiety is like a fear without a subject. Anxiety comes from the feeling that you are losing control of the situation where you are. And I think there is a connection between this massive delegation of our own mind, the ownership of our own mind, and the growing anxiety in contemporary times. And here is where transitional objects come into play. Again, in psychology, a transitional object is a toy like a teddy bear or the Linus blanket that helps a child to elaborate the process of detachment from the mother. I mean, for a toddler, he and the mother are the same. There is no distinction between them. The baby needs to gain the awareness of being an individual separated from the mother. And in the process of detachment, the transitional object, the teddy bear or the soft toy, helps the children to do the work, because On the one hand, the baby doesn't touch the mother's body anymore, so there is a separation, a detachment. On the other hand, the teddy bear replaces the mother's body temporarily, so it helps the baby in the process. Transitional objects in psychology are about providing a feeling of being reassured, are about dampen anxiety. And I think that these pieces of furniture, they do quite the same. They're aesthetic, they're soft, gentle aesthetic, rounded shapes, not aggressive colors. All these aesthetic features, they provide a contribution in dampening the anxiety we live in because of the massive delegation of our own mind, the ownership of our own mind. If you take a look at this armchair as an example, you have two colors, one inside and the other outside. The very fact that you have two different colors makes this armchair something you can not only sit over, but also enter and feel hugged, feel embraced by it, as it were a mother, as it were a situation you want to come back in order to feel reassured. So it is not by chance that these transitional objects in design look like toys or resemble toys. There is a connection with the childhood, like the teddy bear, like the transitional objects in psychology. They are not toys, they are for real, but they evoke in you the reassuring feeling of the childhood. Even in this lamp, take a look at this lamp. It is a table lamp. There are no edges, no square angles in this lamp. The shape is well-rounded. The light comes out from it in a gentle way, not with edges, but in a nuanced way, in a soft way. And this lamp, it is even soft if you touch it. It is like a pillow. Of course, you have no functional reason for making a soft lamp, but you have a lot of reasons from the meaning viewpoint. Being the lamp soft, it is consistent with the overall meaning of transitional object. The third language I'd like to talk about, again, is about the impact of digitality in our life. Graphic blocks language is the evolution of decorative language. Decorative language from the 80s, well, 1978 actually, but that armchair already belonged to the 80s as design. You have here the decoration, which is the most important feature in the object. It's all about the decoration, this armchair designed by Alessandro Mendini. The decoration here is still mostly a matter of graphic pattern on the armchair. In recent years, it evolves. The decoration becomes tangible, becomes three-dimensional. Not only a two-dimensional graphic pattern, but the graphic pattern gains a body, a three-dimensional body. And contemporary graphic blocks, I think, that takes the next step in this process. Indeed, here you have the pieces of graphic decoration used as building blocks of the object. The cultural meaning implied in this kind of aesthetic, the graphic block aesthetics, this meaning is the same as the visual tangibility we experience nowadays when we use our digital tools. Think about the icons on your smartphone or on your tablet. They are just graphic pictures. They are not real three-dimensional things made of matter. They are just pictures, but you can touch it. You touch them for real. The tangible relationship you have with them is real, is an actual relation, as they were something with a body, not just visual ghosts. Indeed, digitality is creating a new visual experience where you not only see the pictures, but you touch them. A visual experience that talks not only to your eyes, but to your hands, to your touch, to your gestures. There is a short video on YouTube that I'd like to show to students when I talk about this language, and I will show the video to you as well. In this video, we can see a 1-year-old baby that plays with magazines and tablet. And she tries to swipe the pictures on the magazine. She expects that those pictures will react to her touch. And she's a little bit disappointed when she realized that this tablet doesn't work, that this picture doesn't work. Maybe the finger is broken, she thinks, so she check it. But no, the finger is okay, so maybe the tablet is broken. And in the end, she set that magazine aside, and now this one works. She's a real digital native, and she expects that visual experience is something sensitive to her touch, something which is supposed not only to be looked at, but also touched. This is the visual tangibility that in this language becomes building block. These graphic blocks are building blocks whose matter is this visual tangibility. Visual tangibility coming from digital tools, digital interfaces. And here you can see one more example. The first one I showed you, this one, is a piece of furniture made of wood, like a cabinet. This one is no furniture design, it is packaging design, but the language is the same. This is a pack for a Japanese brand of chocolate. The language is the same. The language is the same even in this design belonging to fashion design field. Again, we have this graphic block put on the piece, on the cloth. The last language I will address tonight, arts and witchcraft, is a little bit different from the 3 languages we have seen so far. The 3 languages analyzed so far are languages that are suitable for the market, are good for brands, for firms. Actually, they are selling good right now at the present time. The last language I will talk about, the evolution of anthropological language, is more like an underground language. Young designers, experimental designers do that for their own personal research. It is a language not so easy to sell, but interestingly, it is a language which is out there. The contemporary evolution of it is out there since the beginning of the 19th. So it is 25 years that designers are feeling that this language tells something about the world they live in, about the world we live in. This example is from 80s. This is more recent, a more recent example. But here we have, properly speaking, the contemporary evolution of anthropological that I call arts and witchcraft language. In this language, we have all the imaginary coming from Hermetism, magicism, alchemy, that become a cognitive metaphor to tell something about our present time. Now, let's see what I mean for a cognitive metaphor and how this cognitive metaphor tells something about our life, our present culture. Now, about the cognitive metaphor. The user experience designer and expert Mike Kuniavsky, in his book, proposed to substitute the old cognitive metaphor of desktop we use in our computers and digital devices for the cognitive metaphor of magic. A cognitive metaphor is something that visually make you able to understand a content, an information. The desk, the files, the directories where we put files in, all these things are a cognitive metaphor, purposely designed in order to make us able to cognitively manage what's going on in computers, what's going on in our digital devices. The devices and the computers inside themselves, they do not think like that. They run their own process. We need this cognitive metaphor in order to manage them and understand them. Kuniavsky says, well, the cognitive metaphor of desktop and directories and so forth was good as long as computers were quite simple machines doing very interesting things, but just few of them and simple performances. Nowadays, digital devices are much more powerful than that. Nowadays, digital devices, their performances are like magic performances. Just think about it. Your phone talks to you. Your phone knows where you are. Your phone can show you the way. And the many apps in the phone provide you with a lot of magic experiences, magic things. They know how you feel. They know what you need. So Kuniavsky proposed that in order to cognitively manage these digital superpowers of our devices, the cognitive metaphor of the magic would be more suitable, more helpful. And that's why he proposed that. And in the arts and witchcraft design language, I think that the recovery of the science, materials, all the imaginary coming from alchemy, hermetism, magicisms, all these kind of things are like a cognitive metaphor. So it's not that designers are becoming superstitious again or things like that. They are relying on this cognitive metaphor because they feel that our world is becoming magic again, full of magic again. Full of magic because of the superpowers introduced by digital things, by the digital ecosystem. Actually, magics in the past was, as I said, a cognitive metaphor that people used to try to understand what they did not really understand according to our modern science. Ancient people, primitive people, they did not know the reason why you have a lightning coming from the clouds. So they provided a magical explanation, a cognitive metaphor in order to talk about and to cognitively manage and understand something that was mysterious to them. Nowadays, the digitality, the digital superpowers are mysterious to most of us because, as I said before, we are familiar with the interface, but not with what was happening behind the interface. And like people in the past, maybe we need this magic as a cognitive metaphor to manage super powers, super events that we do not really understand. So the magic not as alternative science or trustworthy science, but as a tool to cognitively managing this magic reality, digitally augmented reality. This is the reason why I think so many contemporary design deals with this kind of language. The more our reality becomes magic, digitally augmented, the less we can cognitively grasp it. And so the more we may find helpful to create sort of cognitive metaphors in order to understand it, or at least to manage it, even though we do not properly understand it. And now let's go to the final point, to the final topic, these enchanted objects and distributed interface. I talk about those languages because I think that those languages together are suggesting us an interesting evolution of this convergence between reality and digitality, between digital things, digital powers, and physical things, physical objects. An evolution, a future which is not the same as you may think by looking the contemporary development of digital tools. If you look at the digital tools we have now, you may think that in the future we will have more and more slabs of black glass crammed with apps, crammed with functions, crammed with so many apps that we will be overwhelmed by them. But this guy, David Rose, works at the MIT Media Lab. In his book, Enchanted Objects, he suggests a different future. He suggests a future where, he's also a designer actually, not only an instructor and researcher, a future where we will not be surrounded by all these black slabs crammed with apps and functions, but instead we will have objects digitally augmented, but simple in themselves. Objects dedicated to one specific task, each one to one specific task, or just a few related tasks, instead of being crammed of many, many apps and functions. Because a slab crammed with functions, it is already overwhelming to us. And it will be even more in the future, when you will have much more apps and functions, all of them squeezed inside your glass slab. That will be not magic at all. That will be like you are floated by digitality. Digitality do not make your life better, but to some extent worse. You will be overwhelmed, not augmented by this digitality. In order to save the magic of digitality, David Rose envisions a future where each object is not just digitally too much augmented, but enchanted. It has a magic provided by digitality, but not too much of it, not in a way that you can't cognitively manage. I think that what he suggests in his book, it is a very good book. I suggest you to read it. The title is Enchanted Objects. What he suggests in his book, I find it very consistent with the evolution of the languages I've talked about in this lecture. Of graphic blocks, because graphic blocks is about having the digital, the visual tangibility. Objects that are like a visual digital interface, but actually that you can touch because they are for real, they have a body. And transitional objects, we have seen what is their meaning and obvious construction itself. And the arts and witchcraft because of the magic, a magic that you appreciated, not you are overwhelmed by. This idea of a distributed interface, I think it is one of the possible, and I find it more interesting, next evolution in furniture design and product design. Having objects clean in the aesthetic, transitional in the aesthetic, or obviously constructed. So something that you can understand at the first glance. They are not crammed of things that overwhelm you, too many functions, too many stimuli, too many signs. No, simple in their aesthetics, cognitively manageable, and probably digitally augmented. So magic, but not too much. Not because they will be crammed with many functions, but each of them will have one or few related tasks. So the interface in the end will be distributed because each single object, real object, will be like an app. And the objects together surrounding you in a room, in a house, in your life, all of them together will be like the interface, like a distributed interface, an interface that you not only look at, it is not only in front of you, it is not only something you see, but something you are, you live in, you live among these pieces. You move inside the apps, so the objects of this distributed interface. You can touch it. It is sensitive to your touch because it is magic. It will be digitally augmented, but not overwhelming. Each of them will be simple in the aesthetic and the function. The complexity will be provided by the interface as a whole, not squeezed inside each single object. I know that technology can do that, but the point and the question that designers should ask themselves is it the best way to use technology? It is the best way to enhance everyday objects. It is the best way to provide objects with the digital magic. Probably not. I think that this is not the best way. I believe that much more sort of a distributed interface will be an enchanted world. A world where digitality is not overwhelming, but really something that enhances your life, that makes your life better. You have a positive feeling with objects, and not feel totally displaced and overwhelmed by them. This is the last slide, the last picture I will show you. In this picture, you can see you have a desk lamp designed by Odoardo Fioravanti, an Italian designer. In this desk lamp, it is a new project. It dates back 3-4 months ago. It's very new. You see the aesthetic is consistent with the first languages we analyzed tonight, with the transitional object language, graphic blocks language. Well, this lamp has no switcher. In order to switch the lamp on and off, you just need to pass your hand this way. It is touch-free, it reads the gesture, and so you can turn the lamp on or off. So the lamp is magic. Like a wizard, you make a gesture and the light appears, the magic appears. But not too much magic. It doesn't have a very complicated interface. It doesn't have a screen for the interface. It doesn't have a glass slab with the apps crammed in it. There is no slab at all, no monitor at all. The object itself, it is like the app that do something specific, one specific task. Your gesture, like a magic, activates the light. I think that could be an app, metaphorically speaking, in the distributed interface, an interface which is the same furnished environment surrounding you at home or in a room or in places like that. And basically that's all. So thank you for listening, and if you have questions, I will be happy to try to reply. Thank you.